do what you love and find a way to make that work for your career. I count myself being lucky. I came in, so I come from a working class family. I'm a first generation college student. I'd say that, for trying to find something that you want to do in the long term and really feeling satisfied in the long term is that if you can find something that doesn't just pay the bills, but you're really passionate about, of course it helps.
Yeah.
Of course it doesn't always happen. So if that is you, count yourself lucky.
Yep. Hey Wildcats, welcome back to the University of Arizona podcast. Today we are really excited to have our club advisor here with us, Dr. Anderson. He's an assistant professor in the School of Journalism, and currently he's our club advisor, which is really super cool. We have wanted to interview him for the longest time, but with schedules and everything, this is one of the perfect time we could find. Thank you for coming down to the UAZ podcast. So we have a few questions for you today. When did you realize you had a calling to this kind of work, like teaching, being a professor?
Yeah, so that's fun. Those are all different questions with different answers for me. I think that the way I can start with it is that ever since I was thinking about going to college, something that I wanted to do was to work in higher education. So back in the olden times of 2014, whenever I first went to college, I was a biology student. And I figured that I wanted to be a biochemist, a biochemical researcher at an institution whenever I got through that process of getting my PhD in that field. That obviously it did not happen. I'm appointed into the School of Journalism. But, that was something that throughout the course of my undergraduate to graduate studies, it was a winding path that about halfway through my master's, I decided that working as a faculty member in a mass communication discipline like journalism was really where I wanted to be.
Yeah. So what do you do during your undergraduate studies? Was it related to biology, more of journalism?
So I was an undergraduate at the University of Texas in the biology, as a biology major. And something that was neat, actually, about the University of Texas is that they had a student research program called the Freshman Research Initiative. So from the minute you step onto campus as a freshman, you're put into research education and you get to be a student researcher. Which is, this is not something that's particularly common at a lot of institutions. Usually if you get involved in research for natural sciences, it happens a lot in your undergrad, but it's not something that happens so early. So what was nice about it is that I realized I really fundamentally don't want to do this.
Yeah.
It was something that in my freshman year I was like, this is just not a good fit for me of working in a biochemistry lab. So then, because biology is a pretty diverse field, I was exploring more of the ecology side of things.
Yeah.
And at both of my classes and in doing student research there. And again, that really wasn't where it felt like I wanted to be either.
So then would you say it's very important for students to do more research-based projects or getting involved with internship earlier to get a sense of what they're going to do in the future in order to make a decision early?
My advice to you as a student is that not necessarily if you want to do research, but whatever you want to do that you think you want to do for your profession, do it early. So get some professional experience, get some working experience, and see if it's something that works for you. In my case, that was research, but for whatever you want to do, my advice would be to try and do it before you commit to doing that for your career. Yeah. Because even if you like the subject, I love biology, I didn't want to be a biologist, just as a case in point.
I think that's such an important point that you made because we've interviewed so many students here at the U of A where they changed their majors multiple times and they're still learning what they want to do in the future. So stepping that foot as a freshman and taking the opportunity to learn what your career and major will be in the future is so important. And I think students should really listen to that.
Yeah, and it's something that I think that obviously there's some financial cost to change your major if it means you have to have more years of your degree program.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I think that if it works for you as a student and that's something that you feel strongly is what you want to, is that you want to change what you plan on doing, then I don't think there's any shame in saying that, this is something where I really need a change, or this is just really not working for me. It's perfectly normal.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's something that I don't think there's actually a lot of people that know exactly what they want to do with their lives whenever they turn 18 and come to campus.
Yeah, we're constantly changing, and we get to, like you mentioned, we get to go to college or any opportunity that we get at such a young age, and we don't know anything about ourselves. We're still learning.
It's a funny system that you're really taking a bet on knowing what you're going to want to do for the rest of your life at 18 years old.
So for our next question is, what does it mean to look at science communication from a ecological perspective?
Yeah. So that's something that is a term that I'm really trying to introduce for my research. So first of all, just to be clear leading up to this, I study science communication. So I was trained as a researcher in science communication during my master's. I was further trained during my PhD at, again, the University of Texas. And, coming here, that's where my main research home is at the University of Arizona, is studying science communication. So when I talk about that, I mean public communication about things that have some kind of technical component to them. So complex topics. So in my case, I study a lot of climate change. I study a lot of bioethics things. So I'm working with students now to study in vitro fertilization. Different things that if you really get into the nitty-gritty of it, there's a pretty technical aspect. When it comes to looking at it from an ecological perspective, so what I'm trying to stake out as my area in research is looking at communication not just as a one-on-one event of one person to another, and not to disparage that, it's a valuable area, but I'm more interested in how are these social systems that really constitute society as we know it, how are those guiding what these conversations look like among one-to-one people and also in public? So what are some of the social and psychological forces that guide and organize these kind of conversations?
I like how you still carry on the things you learned as an undergrad as a biology major, because it really shows how much passion you have in research and also that specific major.
Well, shucks. Yeah, and that was something that, obviously it's a really different area. If we're talking about communication ecologies, they don't work like a desert ecology does, obviously. But there's still some same principles in just how you think about it. So something that I learned as a trained biologist, as a biology major, was to think holistically. So think about how a lot of different things, different organisms and ecosystem come together to make something that we can all look at and say, yeah, that's an ecosystem. That's how this ecosystem functions with all of these different participating organisms. I think that's just a way of thinking about communication that I try to embrace.
That's really cool. So which one has been one of your favorite part of research so far? Because I know you talked about climate change, the biology aspect, the communication aspect. So which one do you feel like it's most of your favorite?
That's hard. So I think just staying on research projects I talked about, because, and I think we'll get into this, when it comes to all aspects of research, this answer will be different. I'll just put it that way. But when it just comes to some of my favorite research projects, I think those are the ones where I can really try to innovate interesting methods to develop ways to look at communication holistically in ways that maybe hasn't been done before. So either a different method or a different theoretical lens to look at research. So really trying to find these points of innovation to say,
Yeah.
oh, wow, that's neat. I don't think anybody's done this before, and it actually paid off for something. That's always a fun experience in working on a research project.
So how do you see science communication creating real social good in our communities?
Yeah, and I think that the way you phrase that is in reference to my VIP project.
Yeah.
So I can just talk about the VIP, kind of introduce that a little bit.
Mm-hmm. That's okay.
Yeah, so that's something that started this semester, is at the University of Arizona and a couple of other research institutions. They have a cross-campus system for institutionalizing undergraduate and graduate student research education.
Yeah.
So it's called Vertically Integrated Projects, or VIPs. And the idea behind it is that it's trying to support research groups that focus on teaching students to be researchers, and to even themselves be research mentors to successive students, hence vertically integrated. Mm-hmm. So ours that I'm the director of, along with my co-director, Yotam Schmagard, in the School of Government and Public Policy, is called Science Communication for Social Good. So what that really means for us is that we're interested in taking a social scientific way of looking at science communication, public science communication, that is in some way oriented to trying to make society a better place. That the goal of our research is ultimately to study ways that science can be communicated better for some kind of social good.
Has there ever been a project in your VIP courses that really impacted you in a very dramatic way, or really a project that you really enjoyed?
Well, you see, that's cheating, because I'm the director of the VIP, so at least in this early stage, I get to set the projects.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, we were just starting this semester. Mm-hmm. So all the projects so far are ones that I've designed, and are basically on-ramps to help my students see what it's like to do research. So, these students have, for the most part, about 8 weeks of social science research experience. That's not enough to design a project yet. But the idea behind it is an experiential learning opportunity.
Yeah.
So students will work on these projects, and then hopefully they'll learn enough to design projects of their own. So that will be exciting for me, is to see what they come up with.
I work for the VIP projects at the moment, so it's really cool to see that you're creating something like that. So when did you have this idea of creating a project?
Yeah, so the idea behind the VIP, to be perfectly honest, is when we saw a call.
Yeah.
So there's a call for proposals. And it looks, in terms of application, it's similar to applying for an internal grant. But the output is different, because they give you this kind of institutional support that a grant doesn't necessarily have. Mm-hmm. So for us, they helped us recruit, things like that. What really gave us the idea of why this would fit well is because it came from this idea that there really isn't a lot of infrastructure for teaching undergraduates research education in social sciences.
Yeah.
As I mentioned, at the University of Texas, I got to do that kind of research early as a biology major. I've been at the University of Texas, at the University of Wisconsin also, both major research institutions. And I know a lot of people who study at other major research institutions, and there just isn't this culture of teaching people to be independent social science researchers as undergrads that there frankly is in the natural sciences. Mm-hmm. I thought it was a way to try and test out a new model of doing that kind of research education.
So how long is the project? Because I've worked with students who have been part of the VIP projects for 4 years. Do you guys carry on, or it's just a semester long, then students have to come up with their own projects as well?
Yeah, so this is one part where it'll be a little different between the natural sciences and social sciences.
Yeah.
But I think for actually a virtuous reason. So virtuous meaning that it ends up being better on the students' end to work in in the social sciences VAP, I think than a lot of the natural science projects, because social science projects tend to be a lot shorter time frame. Mm-hmm. So we're starting 4 projects this fall. I'm having students sign up for these, and we're getting them enrolled into being collaborators in each of these projects. Yeah. I anticipate all of them can get turned around to publication by the end of the spring semester. So on the desk at an academic journal by then, which for most intents and purposes is a complete project. So, in that sense, it's 1 year per project.
Okay.
But really what I envision the VIP being is really this landing page of a research team where we all work on a number of different projects. So from the student perspective, they're welcome to stay in perpetuity. As long as they're participating and as long as it seems like they're getting something out of it, then I welcome them to stick around, work on new projects as they come up, and again, design their own projects. That's really, that's the gem that I really want to see, is that students get to feeling that, to the point that they know enough about research to say, I can do this myself. I can think of this idea, and I can think of how to execute this with research. And they put in a proposal, and it looks good. It looks like something that's feasible. And then they do it. They work with other students as collaborators, but they're the ones leading that project. That's what I would love to see.
It's always a great idea when you teach somebody and they're able to put everything into practice, what you've been teaching them. So they're like, this is the idea the professor taught me, and this is how I'm evolving, or this is how I'm bringing in new ideas. It's always something great. So with this project, will you give course credits, or are the students going to be paid?
So we do not have the funding to offer pay. Sorry. But this is... it's something where we wanted to have a pretty big team. So it was, we decided to put our budget to ways that could be better suited for the team. In our case, it's travel funding is what we're using our budget for. We're able to use our budget to send people to conferences to present their research. For recruitment, hi there at home. So the Science Communication for Social Good VIP does offer course credit. So I'm flexible in terms of what I offer. Whatever works for you all. Up to 3 hours a semester of research credit, be it an independent study or a directed research credit, or whatever I can offer in this department that helps you, I'm happy to. My only ask is that people can participate either for course credit, or after they've already done that, they can stay on and work as a research collaborator, not necessarily getting it for course credit. So then any of the graded aspects or the different little assignments and check-ins throughout the semester, obviously they'd be excused from that because they're not getting credit, they're not getting a grade. But, that's really just in there to make sure that I have some accountability at first, to make sure that people are really learning the kind of building block techniques before they get into doing research. Yeah,
and they're also gaining more skills, because if they've done that and then become collaborators, of course they're gaining a lot of skills from you, and including from the people they're supporting, the students they're supporting. You are a professor at the School of Journalism, and it's one of the places where people talk about politics a lot. So what is the best way to talk about science when topics get controversial or political?
Yeah, this was a fun question. Whenever I saw it, I thought, this is a fun question. Because you'll hear the answer that every academic will give you for most questions is, it depends. So whenever you say best way, what I think is an important way to think about that is, what are you actually trying to accomplish? So people communicate differently for different purposes.
Yep.
Obviously, I have a degree, as I mentioned, in advertising and public relations. And so a lot of what I learned about in classes that I took for that degree was strategic communication. So if you're trying to communicate in a way that you actually have a strategic goal in mind, then it really depends on what your goal is about talking about science, about controversial issues. If you're doing journalism, let's say you're a journalist, you're covering controversial science topics, then it's really the goal in mind is really no different than probably most of your reporting, is that you're trying to inform people. You're trying to enlighten the public. You're trying to hold powerful parties to account. These are all things that journalists do for any topic.
Yeah.
That's no different for science. Where it gets different for science is that things are complicated. So if you're trying to enlighten people about, say, climate change, which is, of course, a fairly controversial issue, then you might want to try and report in a way that informs people about how climate change works. Of course, the magic trick is that very few people really know in a very detailed way how climate change works, right? So it's all about different gases in proportion in the atmosphere, different proportions of, in particular, CO2 and oxygen, and how much they radiate heat. I wouldn't be able to tell you exactly how that works because I'm not I'm neither a chemist nor a physicist nor an atmospheric scientist.
Yeah.
But what I can say is that that's something where you have to pick and choose how you talk about that topic because it's getting into too much detail is probably detracting from your other goals as a communicator.
So I know you mentioned that when people communicate, they really have different goals and purposes. Now, how about for you as a professor in the class settings? Because when it comes to teachings, students will ask lots of questions and there will be discussions in classes. So how do you balance that when it comes to controversial topics in classrooms?
That's a good question. That I think is something that a lot of academics are trying to figure out.
Yeah.
Right now, because we're living in a moment where there is a lot of controversy, and especially controversy in the classroom. So the way it's been explained to me as a faculty member at the University of Arizona and teaching your class is that the important feature is that the class discussions stay within the purview of the class. So if it is in the course description, if it is in the syllabus on the calendar day for that day.
Yeah.
So, just making sure the topic fits, making sure that you, as a faculty member who is expected to have some area of expertise, speak within your area of expertise. And I think this is just, in general, good advice, is to be clear about what you're saying is a fact and what you're saying is an opinion.
Yeah.
As a reminder, you're allowed to have an opinion as a faculty member. And you're allowed to share that with your students. You're not allowed to, for instance, try to make their opinions your opinions.
Yeah.
So I'll just tell you what I tell my students is that, frankly, I don't care what they think about controversial issues. That's not my area of interest. What I'm interested about is for them to know, when it comes to science issues, one, what is the state of science on things like climate change? What is, in this case, scientific consensus? If they don't agree with that, that's their business. They're allowed to disagree with it, but they have to at least know that that's what what we understand.
What if they wanna listen? They wanna listen it from your perspective, because I believe that would be the right way to do it. It's when you have a conversation about something that is different from your topic.
Yeah.
And if it continues, of course, it's going to bring a lot of differences in the classroom. But at times, you ask this question so that you can hear from your professor's perspective. Then if you kind of limit it to only what is supposed to be on the syllabus, don't you think it's going to limit a lot of students who want to think ahead or want to think it in a different way?
Yeah, if I understand your comment
it's going to limit a lot of... if you want to really think it deeply or come up with different ideas, it's going to limit a few students.
Sure. I mean, it's something wherein to put it another way.
Yeah.
The reason that this is in place is, I think, actually not even necessarily protection from controversy. I think it actually really just has more to do with people sign up for this class with certain expectations of what it looks like.
Yeah.
If it diverges too much from that, then, you're not really getting to the heart of the class. That said, I teach a class currently that is about science in the news. Well, how much more broadly defined can you get?
Yeah.
Yeah, so, when we talk about, of course, one of the big issues that we talk about in two of the class periods actually is science misinformation. Of course, that's going to be controversial, and of course, things will come up.
80%.
Yeah, exactly.
Class discussion.
Yeah, but I think there's an art to it. So there's an art to discussion leadership, just like there's an art to teaching. As a teacher, I actually really favored class discussions. So, I'm really lucky that I've gotten classes, including science, that are really benefited from having a discussion style to them. And it's actually, it's really great to hear how my students are thinking through these topics. So if we're talking about, as we talk about in science misinformation, we talk about the kind of psychological aspects that attract people to reading misinformation and how different people of different identity groups, like say political identities, how they can believe or disbelieve misinformation at different rates, depending on if it agrees or disagrees with what they already believe. So like whenever it comes to that, I feel like my job is to teach them, this is the research, like this is what we understand, how we understand misinformation to work. This is what misinformation can look like in science. For instance, what are some pieces of scientific misinformation you all have seen? Is there any that you might believe? I mean, that's an uncomfortable question, but really starting to think about it, like, is there anything that, asking students to think through how they might fall for misinformation.
Do you push your students to give their opinions in these controversial topics, or do you just kind of just blow them off the table?
Neither. So I don't push them to do it, because I think that's again it can be a kind of uncomfortable experience that's not a necessary learning experience.
Yeah.
And I also don't blow them off. I tell them that for me, I don't really care what they think, in the sense that they're welcome to think whatever they want to think. I'm not going to try to change their minds about their values in the world. I'm interested to hear it insofar as it is a good learning opportunity for them to learn about the topic and to be generally enlightened about how, for instance, if we're talking about misinformation again, seeing how, and everybody has this, I should say, there's no target here.
Of course.
But everybody has certain groups that they see themselves as belonging to that makes them susceptible to misinformation.
Yeah.
I believe that it makes our society a better place if more people recognize that this is a general psychological trend and they're able to see that in themselves. Yeah. And if it takes their opinions for them to see that, A-okay with me. If that's how they work through it themselves, I'm happy to have that conversation with them. That said, when I say I don't care what they think, that just means I don't care about changing
their opinions.
Exactly. Yeah. That's not my job.
Because I'm a political science student, so when it comes to political classes, so we have a lot of that. But I've seen some professors, they will come to do, for their lectures, and they'll speak up to the end of the lecture time. So it's they don't give room for those topics, to come up most often in class. Then others will give you chances to speak or ask questions, but then they'll kind of limit the amount and the frequency. And if you have more questions, they'll be come to my office hours, we can chat more in person than either having this conversation with the whole class because of time, and maybe because it's going to kind of lead us to a different direction. Like you said, people come in classes when they know I'm going to take this class and this is what I'm going to learn out. So this is the outcome I'm going to get of this class. And then if you really bring in those other issues, of course, you're diverting the whole class. So I feel like different professors have got their ways of dealing with such controversial topics. And when it comes to online classes, I think it's the easiest, because then we don't kind of have those in-person interactions, but you can only email your professors, which really limits the frequency of how you can email and receive responses back.
Yeah, and as you mentioned, there's, frankly, a lot of boring reasons that we don't have these discussions in classes. But I got to end class by 3:15 p.m., and I have to cover this because it's on the exam, so I have to tell them the piece of information. Yeah. So, I can only earmark, let's say, 5 to 10 minutes for this particular discussion question. Yeah. So if something becomes a big enough back-and-forth conversation, I'll often find myself saying, this is a cool conversation. Let's have it offline. Let's come to office hours. Especially if it's something where it's moving away from the lesson plan for that day.
Yeah.
But that said, it's a balance to strike because you don't want to discourage people from learning.
From learning and from asking the questions, because if you do that twice, I'm not gonna ask you any other question because I'll be like, maybe he doesn't want to have such conversations.
Exactly.
Yeah. So you gotta have to balance it.
I think my advice for other faculty members, and I don't feel necessarily comfortable doing that because of course I'm a junior faculty member myself.
Yeah.
But what I found worked well for me is just to work with the assumption that people are working in good faith until it's proven that they're not. That, work with the assumption that your students are, for the most part, just being students who are some mix of trying to learn, some mix of trying to get credit, some mix of being in a class out of a routine.
Yeah.
Sure, that's just how most students work most of the time. And I think for those kind of class discussions, of course, things can absolutely get heated. But I think that whatever you can do to, one, stay safe in terms of your expectations at the institutional level, that's important. Two, make sure it's a good learning environment for your students, so not discouraging people, but also not derailing the class too much. Then I think that's all the better.
I think it depends on the major because in my law classes, my professors push us to say our opinions, but I think it's because they're teaching us how to make an argument with the case. So it's unique how your perspective and your majors and how my classes are the complete opposite. So how has your background in both science and journalism shaped how you teach and mentor students here at the U of A?
Yeah, I think that really comes out with my research mentorship. Because, well, it's actually fun that I have a science background for teaching science in the news because, obviously, compared to a lot of the students on a lot of the scientific facts, I have a leg up because I already have a degree in the natural sciences. I've taken advanced ecology classes. Sure. So, that's something where I can really, for those particular classes, dig into pretty deep examples to think of. And also speak from the perspective of somebody who was in the process of being trained to be a natural scientist before becoming a social scientist. But really, that's where it comes out is in that research education aspect of I'm very intentionally for this VIP and a broader model of what I call the lean model of undergraduate research in the social sciences. Trying to very intentionally bring in what we found works well in the natural sciences and just say, there's no reason to think that this wouldn't work well for the social sciences.
Before we start recording, you mentioned that you already knew you wanted to work as a faculty at a university, but growing up, was that your goal? Like in high school, in elementary, was that your goal to work at a university, or did you have different aspirations?
Frankly, my goal as somebody in elementary school was to be a professional Yu-Gi-Oh player. But that one's a little bit of a harder one to make a living out of. But that was something that, I think it was probably this effect of coming in from the topic first, is that, I knew I really liked biology. It was something that I felt like I was good at, and I really wanted to know more about, and just coming in from this very, an open education thing of, I want to be this professor because I just want to learn more about the subject, and that's how I understand how to do it. But it was, as I mentioned, that was when actually it came to doing the practice of that research. It wasn't something I wanted to do for the rest of my life. Yeah, so I think that science communication really came in for me as a way of striking a middle ground. I knew I liked the process of doing social science research more, but I still live in this topical space of looking at things like climate change or IVF or, even artificial intelligence is something that we're working with in the VIP.
It's really funny, you changed, because as an elementary child, you kind of had an aspiration to do something, and then all of a sudden you changed it because when we are kids, we don't realize
No.
what we are talking about, or
Yeah.
like we don't look at the impact, we don't look at how much we're gonna make. So do you think like if people will do what they thought they would, like when they're in elementary school, and as they grow up, if they could do those some aspiration, don't you think like people will be more happier?
I actually have already gone on record in the course of this podcast saying that I
Yeah.
think it's a funny social system that at 18 you stake out what you want to do for the rest of your life.
Yeah.
I think it'd be a funnier social system if it was at 8.
Yes.
Put it that way. No, I mean, I said it in jest.
Yeah.
Like, you know, that was just something where the finer details of living in a in a capitalist society where you're expected to have a career that makes money and you survive off of that.
Yeah.
The finer details are lost on 8-year-olds. So to take it into another point, I think that, you know, this is kind of trite advice, but as a life advice, do what you love and find a way to, and you're going to be very lucky if you can find a way to make that work for your career. I count myself being lucky.
Yeah.
You know, I came in, so I come from a working class family, I should say. I'm a first generation college student. That was something where talking about life as a faculty member to my parents, they've never been on a college campus, let alone worked with a faculty member, worked with a research scientist. So, you know, what they see me doing is that it seems like I have that I'm getting paid reasonably well for what I'm doing, and it's working.
Yeah.
And I'm happy with it, and I am. But I'd say that, you know, for trying to find something that you want to do in the long term and really feeling satisfied in the long term, is that if you can find something that doesn't just pay the bills, but you're really passionate about, of course it helps.
Yeah.
Of course, it doesn't always happen. So if that is you, count yourself lucky.
Yep. My sisters always say that choose your hard and be happy with it, because everything is hard, but choose your hard. Are you happy with it? Because no matter how hard it gets, if you don't know who chose it and you're happy about what you're doing, you're passionate about it, you don't always complain. You minimize those complaints. You're like, even if it's hard, I'm happy about what I'm doing. It always helps you. And when it comes to mental health, when it comes to relieving stress and whatever the workload you have, it does help overall.
Of course, there's challenges with every profession.
Everything, yeah.
So, like, you know, my challenges now, of course, working as a faculty member, you're not clocking in, you're not clocking out for the most part. You can take work home with you. It's not uncommon. I worked with professors at the University of Texas in my PhD program who, you know, we were going back and forth in edits on a Google Doc at 2 o'clock in the morning.
Wow.
In preparation for a conference deadline.
Yeah.
So, you know, there's some challenges with that. But, again, you know, coming from a working class background, I don't think what I do is as hard as what a lot of people I've known do. And just in terms of physical labor. And I don't mean to disparage this. What I really mean is that, you know, not to overshare about my wife, but my mother, her father, that... and she has a stepfather, so that's why I'm saying her father. But he died young as a result of probably being exposed to toxic chemicals. He worked in an oil field, and in that time, there were not a lot of safety protections working in an oil field in Oklahoma. So he, along with a lot of the people he worked with, developed terminal cancer in his 40s. That's harder than what I'm doing. You know, what I'm doing now is hard in the sense of it's a lot of work, and it's a contentious thing to be working in higher education, especially in the social sciences right now. But, you know, I find it manageable. It's a hard that I'll take.
Also, like, for the UAZ podcast right now, like, I think we are lucky to have you because you have such a great background in biology, journalism, when it comes to sales and advertisement, which is really cool. And so now, as the advisor for the UAZ podcast, how can students get involved, and how do you see this platform helping them grow academically, professionally?
So my philosophy as the club advisor, which is not news to you all, but just to get it on the record, is that I'm here to advise. So you all came to me with this idea for a club.
Yes.
Technically, you came to people in the School of Government and Public Policy, but Yotam let me know that you all were looking around for a club advisor. And, you know, under no circumstances do I want to be the one running this idea. The way I see it, it's y'all's idea.
Yeah.
So I think that my role in that process is to be somebody who has a little bit more experience, a little bit more years around the block here.
Yeah.
And to say that, you know, some things will work better or maybe not as well as others based on what I know. So if I'm doing that, then I feel good about my job, unless you all need something else from me. But you know, that's a conversation we can have.
Yep.
For students getting involved in the UAZ podcast and what, for my perspective, looks like a good way to get involved if you want to work on a podcast, start a podcast, dip your toes into media and do that thing that we were already talking about of doing the work that you want to do professionally as early as you can, then I encourage them to reach out to you all and try to build this into a space that can be supportive for students. That's something I'd like to see as the advisor.
How then do you see this helping them grow?
How does it help them grow?
Yeah.
Again, it's professional experience. I mean, really, just getting that hands-on practical experience. You know, and again, this is me as a club advisor, not me as a teacher. But as a teacher, my teaching philosophy is highly influenced by Johann Wolfgang von Goethe, who I think I got the German right on that one. But, you know, he's a very prominent philosopher from a few hundred years ago. And he actually wrote quite a bit about teaching. And a lot of what he wrote about that I found really interesting was the emphasis on a practical education, on trying to find ways to bridge theory and practice and try to put into practice what you are learning.
Yeah.
And I think that's something that is just really an invaluable experience. So for people doing research, I encourage them to try student research. For people who want to work in media, then I encourage you, if you want to be a journalist, start writing, start building your portfolio. If you want to be a podcaster, start a podcast. Work with other people who have a podcast and who are in conversation about what that's like. I think that's what will help people get a good outcome.
We are coming to the end of the episode. I first want to thank you, Professor Anderson, for coming on and taking the time to talk to us and also inspire students here at the U of A. One thing that you did mention that was really inspiring that I didn't even know is that you are a first generation. Rebecca and I are also first generation. So seeing you having a PhD, being so involved at the U of A is so inspiring for both of us and also students here. So for our last question for you is, looking ahead, what excites you the most about the future of science communication?
Yeah, that's not a loaded question. What excites me the most is that I think just to start with this idea that a lot of people are talking about a very precarious state of science communication right now. Just socially, it seems like a lot of science issues that maybe were not as controversial are becoming more controversial. So why would that be exciting? Well, it is a little scary, but, you know, in terms of a social scientist, it's exciting in the sense that you can see the social dynamics in practice. You can really see, like, case in point, like, oh, this is how science misinformation spreads. Oh, this is how it's believable or not. And as a researcher who is interested in, who part of your research philosophy is benefiting society, then you start to see pretty clearly that, oh, this is how society changes on this axis. This is how I can start to think of ways for my research to have impact in this way. So in terms of doing the research, that's what excites me. In terms of what excites me about science communication in general, I have no idea. That's the fun part. New science happens all the time.
Yeah.
We live in a scientific world. Science, more so than at any other point in history, and we'll see if this continues to be the case, there's so much support for science and so much science being done that you have no idea what's going to come up. That's the fun part.
So do you see yourself working in this field for the next 10 years, 20 years, or changing the whole field career to something else?
I'd certainly like to stay.
Yeah.
Well, we'll see if that happens.
Yeah,
I mean, you know, I don't want to be grim about it, but nobody knows what the future is going to hold. Yeah. If I get to stay, I'm more than happy for it.
Yeah, thank you so much for coming to our podcast. This has been a fun podcast whereby we were learning so much. You had to advise the students, the professors as well, not only the students. Like most of our guests will come and then they'll only advise the students, but you brought in something new whereby like you're also talking to the professors, which is really cool. So we're really excited. Thank you for your time.
Of course.
Yeah, and we hope to have you again on other future conversations.